Hello, we are Group 3, and this is our analysis of change management within the movie Gung Ho. It takes place in Hadleyville, Pennsylvania. It is a small town with strong American spirit. Over the past 9 months, the automobile plant, which employs most of the townspeople, has been closed. Because of this, Hadleyville and its families that live there face enormous hardship. Many of them have been out of work and will soon be forced to abandon their homes. They leave the plant's former foreman, Hunt Stevenson, to bring in Japanese investors to take over the plant and get it up and running again. Surprisingly, the Japanese businessmen take the deal, but reopen the plant under very harsh working conditions. This is due to a severe culture clash between Japanese and American work habits. Eventually, Hunt Stevenson makes a deal with the management that if the workers can produce 15,000 cars in a month, they will get a raise and ease up on the strict work policies. Unfortunately, the workers are under the impression that they have to make 13,000 cars because this is what Hunt Stevenson tells them. He does this to keep them working since 15,000 cars seems unattainable. After working to the brink of exhaustion and finding out about the true deal, the workers finally strike. Stevenson and the Japanese plant manager Kazuhiro do not want to see the plant fail and start to build the cars themselves in an attempt to rally the morale of the workers. This inspires the workers to give it a final push and try to reach 15,000 cars. After inspection of the plant, the company's CEO announces that the count is slightly less than 15,000. Despite this, he's impressed by the workers' effort and the management's determination. Ultimately, he declares that the goal has been met and that the plant will remain open. Japanese and American cultures are very different, especially in the business world. In the film, we can see how the culture clash proves to be the biggest challenge for both Japanese management and the American workers. When Stevenson first goes to Tokyo, we see major differences from the start. Japanese workers are being disciplined in painful ways because of poor work performance. They are forced to exercise and perform strenuous martial arts. Later on, when Stevenson finally finds the Japanese boardroom, his sense of humor is not understood as the business remain very serious and stick to business. This foreshadows the conflicting viewpoints and work structures that later take place in the auto plant. The main distinction is that the Japanese put their company and the production of their goods above their families and their own lives. However, the Americans care about their work but view other priorities such as family and working conditions as more important. The Japanese workers are primarily motivated by intrinsic rewards, such as avoiding shame. They are incredibly obedient and respectful with their bosses. They are defined in their work by their performance and position at work. The American workers are primarily motivated by extrinsic rewards, such as cash. They are more concerned with work-life balance and work satisfaction than performance. However, they do care about this, but are not defined by it. Stevenson and Kazuhiro were the primary leaders on each side of the conflict. Stevenson represents the American workers' interests as a pointed liaison, and Kazuhiro represents Japanese management and their leadership style. What Kazuhiro and the Japanese management are ultimately trying to achieve is Japanese plant levels of production and efficiency. Kazuhiro and the Japanese management team want to do this by implementing drastic changes in American work habits and completely converting them to a Japanese working culture. By implementing the strict Asan Motors Corp labor policies, they believe that this is the only way that production can be increased to the necessary level. Stevenson acts as a liaison between Japanese management and the workers. He understands that it is important to increase production, but that the policies the Japanese are implementing will not work. However, even though he does try to change the way the Japanese plan to run the plant, he avoids confrontation with his fellow American workers by consistently lying multiple times.
Guiding Coalition. A guiding coalition is a group with the power and energy to lead and support a collaborative change effort. A single individual, no matter how powerful, cannot sustain a change initiative alone. These individuals bring expertise, energy, and perspective across a variety of areas, and peers respect their professionalism. In order to have an effective guiding coalition, there must be credibility and leadership among the coalition. This allows for persuasiveness and the ability to inspire others to join in on the change that are not part of the guiding coalition. Guiding Coalition. What was the intention? From the onset, the Japanese saw the resistance from the American workforce. On the first day of this joint venture, Kazuhiro addresses the American workforce. We must build spirit, we must be a team with one purpose only. Everyone thinking only of the company. While the Americans were excited to be working again, they were not receptive to the Japanese stance on corporate culture. The only way to achieve a successful relationship between the two parties would be to assign Hunt the role of leading the change. His alliance and trust from the American workers was seen as an opportunity for leadership. The Japanese intended for Hunt to deliver on their behalf, implementing shared values and opinions and establishing a consistent view on work ethic. However, the workers, unreceptive to any sort of change, trusted that Hunt would represent their needs and speak on their behalf as the Japanese tried to enforce their values. Initial results. There was a conflict of interest. Americans believed Hunt would advocate on their behalf and promote work-life balance. Loyal to his former peers, Hunt felt the need to appease the workers at the expense of the Japanese demands. Japanese believed Hunt would advocate on their behalf and enforce their cultural values and emphasis on teamwork. Relying on the success of this relationship, Hunt knew he needed to meet the demands of the Japanese. Because of the different roles Hunt played in each relationship, it caused him to question his delivery and honesty with each, which ultimately drove the two parties further apart. In addition to the delivery, the fact that each culture was founded on opposing principles made it more difficult to create unity. The Japanese culture was founded on collectivism. Collectivism. People are integrated behind a common bond, creating strong ties of loyalty. Less emphasis is placed on maintaining and promoting personal opinions. Instead, management emphasizes harmony and cooperation. The American culture was founded on individualism. Individualism. People are expected to look after themselves, value freedom, challenge, and personal time. Employees have high standards and maintain strongly held opinions. As the Japanese continue to try and enforce their culture, Americans continue to be unreceptive to the change as they feel their values and/or work ethic is not considered. Resistance builds and tension rises. Final results. As the threat of Nissan Motors Corp.'s failure to succeed hit home in different ways, both the Japanese and Americans began to come together and incorporate one another's values into a shared movement in which they collectively worked to achieve the same goal. Inspired by the cooperation between Hunt and Kazuhiro, the workers were inspired to return to and continue to work towards their shared goals and pursue it with a level of diligence the Japanese leaders had encouraged. At the same time, the Japanese now began to understand and realize the importance of meeting people's needs. The ultimate alignment of the company's objectives and values created a sense of unity amongst the Japanese and Americans, which led to the ultimate success. Communication of change. Was the change communicated effectively? The example I'm about to narrate serves to illustrate the inconsistent message conveyed to the American workers. Hunt displays several qualities in his delivery that challenges the effective communication of the change. Conflict rises again when Soito, one of the Japanese managers, tries to show Buster, one of the workers, a different way to paint a car. Buster resists and says, "Why can't we just do what we know how to do?" Obviously frustrated, Soito replies, "Every man learns every job. Then we are a team. No man is special." Hunt steps in to resolve the problem. He explains to Soito, "See, here's the deal on that. You're in America now, and the thing is, Americans really like to feel special." When Hunt requests that the workers be returned to their familiar jobs, Soito firmly says, "There is one way to run this factory. One way." Lack of consistency. As the Japanese try to enforce their values, Hunt continues to oppose their vision and justifies the American way of doing things. It is evident that both cultures remain adamant about their beliefs and refuse to adapt to one another's. Opposition towards Japanese management. As Hunt continues to display this opposition towards Japanese management, it empowers workers to challenge their movement and prolongs the potential success of this acquisition. Lack of transparency and honesty. While it is communicated to Hunt that he must have the workers meet certain expectations in order to stay open, he realizes the demands are unrealistic and it is better to have them produce a realistic number under false promises in order to get somewhere rather than nowhere. In doing so, he promises the workers a raise upon meeting 13,000 cars. The expectations set are neither realistic nor honest. In trying to remain loyal to his former peer, Hunt lowers expectations, essentially misguiding the workers and failing to communicate clearly the company's objectives. As the threat of Nissan Motors Corp. Demise continues to grow, Hunt realizes there is no need for dishonesty. Those who are committed and willing to move forward will accept the challenge and join together. Hunt makes clear the expectations, and the workers join together with a shared purpose and willingness to commit to the same goal. In the end, the two cultures were able to see the benefits in integrating the Japanese and American approaches of doing business. Teamwork is an essential part of a successful business and a establishment of culture. According to Cameron and Quinn, there are 4 types of culture: a hierarchy, control culture; a market, compete culture; clan, collaborative culture; and adhocracy, create culture. Each culture is defined by specific values. The hierarchy culture is also known as the control culture, and it attempts to satisfy the major challenges that organizations face with producing goods and services efficiently for increasingly complex societies. The market culture is also known as the compete culture. The major focus of this is to capitalize on market niches and create competitive advantages through the use of transactions, such as exchanges, sales, and contracts. The clan culture is also known as the collaborative culture and focuses on shared values and goals, cohesion, participation, individuality, and a sense of we-ness. And lastly, the adhocracy culture, also known as the create culture. And the main focus of this culture is that organizations do not have centralized authority. Power flows from one individual to another, or team to team. This type of culture fosters adaptability, flexibility, and creativity if there is uncertainty and ambiguity in circumstances. Establishment of culture continued. The Japanese intended to enforce upon the American workers a culture defined by efficiency and quality. Driven by the bottom line, Japanese culture places an emphasis on productivity and cross-training. Employees are not special, they must be adaptable and able to perform all job functions. According to Cameron and Quinn's 4 types of cultures, the Japanese display and attempt to create a corporate culture most similar to the hierarchy control culture, combined with aspects of the clan collaborative culture, with an emphasis on certain key values. Japanese culture versus American culture. Japanese corporate culture prioritizes professional life compared to American culture, which encourages a work-life balance. Japanese work ethic focuses on efficiency, productivity, quality, and control. In addition, formal rules and policies based on precision dictate Japanese behavior. Compared to American culture, the Japanese encourage collectivism, teamwork, and a unified objective, while American culture places an emphasis on individualism, in which each person has a specialized role specific to them, which is most similar to the hierarchy control culture. It can be argued that both the Japanese and American cultures exhibit aspects similar to one another. However, the differences seem to be more apparent. The obvious differences portrayed in the movie created tension between the Japanese and Americans, which led to resistance. Not until the end, when the contrasting views were understood by both sides, did the cultures begin to successfully integrate and align their values and objectives.
The top half of the Berkowitz model deals with the transformational factors, or those that deal with the change in the deep structure of the system. The leaders chosen to implement these changes were Oishi Kazuhiro and Hunt Stevenson. The opening of the new plant required sudden and revolutionary change, as the two cultures were very different, yet needed to act cohesively. The first transformational factor that causes most changes throughout the model is the external environment. 2 fundamental factors had a part in this, as the town of Hadleyville was desperate for work after the closing of the underwear factory 2 years ago and the closing of the car factory 9 months ago. These 2 factories were the lifeblood of the town and provided most of the jobs. Japanese car company Asan Motors Corporation takes advantage of this situation, as the car industry is competitive, and this will allow them to build the products in America, thus lowering their costs of selling their cars in America. The next factor within the transformational functions is leadership. Kazuhiro and Stevenson represent 2 different cultures and do not work to have one balanced and cohesive vision. Stevenson, as the liaison, does in fact provide vision. However, he does not do this through honesty. Therefore, while he is a role model and has persuasive power, he uses this to his advantage and avoids confrontation, which functional confrontation is necessary in this situation to ensure balance. Kazuhiro has no persuasive power and is in no way, shape, or form a role model to the American workers. This is his fault, as he quickly tries to force the company's labor policies on them and avoids relating to them. In the beginning, there was no unified vision for the company, which creates most of their issues going forwards. However, when desperation was created for both Kazuhiro and Stevenson, this resulted in a unified vision, goal, and great teamwork between the workers of different cultures. The leadership developed a mission and implemented a strategy to achieve this mission. While the Japanese executives' mission was to implement a strategy of forced adaptation to their culture and ways, this required absolute control of the desperate employees, which proved to be very difficult. While the mission was fair, the strategy was all wrong, as they did not take into account the differences in their cultures, as Americans are more individualistic and the Japanese are more team-oriented. Stevenson did not help, as he simply kept delaying addressing the strategy by telling his employees that it will get better in the future. The culture that was forced upon the workers by Kazuhiro and the Japanese executives was greatly different than the personal culture of the American workers. The organization expected norms and values such as a lack of candor with management, existence defined by performance at work, to be intrinsically motivated, the company always comes first and family comes second, and satisfaction is unnecessary. This organizational culture was not compatible with the norms and values of the American employees, who were extrinsically motivated, believed family came before everything else, believe satisfaction is imperative in the workplace, and are far more open with their bosses about their feelings and thoughts. The mission and strategy and organizational culture directly related to the individual and organizational performance of the company. Eventually there was a unified vision created, but this was created very late and was implemented in a manipulative and deceiving manner. This created the mission for 15,000 cars to be reduced, and the deal was if they achieved this, the extrinsic reward of making the workers' salaries 11 to 50 cents an hour and guaranteeing job security would be awarded. However, this mission is not completely unified between the leaders, as Kazuhiro demanded 15,000, which Stevenson accepts but later realizes is bad due to the fact if they do not hit this number but come close, they will not receive anything. He then lies to his comrades in order to get them to hit the goal and accept it. In the end, the goal does bring the two leaders together and does produce high performance from the employees. Everyone's jobs depended on this now, and this caused the necessary teamwork between two different cultures. The lower half of the model is the transactional factors, which have to do with the day-to-day operations of the Asan motor plant. These functions directly result from the transformational functions above, as the leadership will shape the management styles, organizational culture, and mission and strategy. Overall, the impact is much stronger in the downward direction. The management of the executives was very controlling, commanding, and unsympathetic. They forced every worker to work every job so that they could learn every job and held them to seemingly impossible standards. The control was meticulous, as the Japanese executives even installed video cameras to watch over the employees' every move. With a lack of inspirational leadership, this management only infuriated the workers, as they would not blindly follow and listen to the management. Another problem was that until the end, when both leaders became desperate, they did not consider rewarding the employees with extrinsic facts, thus they did not recognize good work. However, this is due to the lack of understanding of the management. They also gave no hope of upward mobility to the Americans, thus creating this feeling of the Japanese as the management and the Americans strictly as the workers. The structure of the company was clearly divided by culture, aside for Stevenson, who was only given a management position because the Japanese executives needed him to manipulate the workers. The Americans were low-level employees and the Japanese were high-level. This created much tension and did not allow for cohesive management and for a mix of cultures within the organization. The systems in place were Stevenson's liaison position, and that was really it. There was nothing else done to help the employees do their job, and even Stevenson's position was really only there to manipulate them rather than to support them. That also is because he chose to use the position that way rather than being hard on the Japanese executives. However, he knew that they would just leave if he did this. He was definitely stuck between a rock and a hard place, but it became clear that he should have just been honest with everyone from the beginning. Also, there was a lack of extrinsic rewards in the beginning due to the fact that the executives did not realize that the American employees were individualistic and would not work to hit high performance based on intrinsic rewards alone. However, when the system was implemented later on due to desperation between the two leaders, thus creating a somewhat unified goal finally, and mission, aside from the manipulation and lying by Stevenson, there was seemingly a better system put in place. The work unit was very Japan versus America, or executives versus workers. There was no inter-unit teamwork, however a lot of intra-unit teamwork within the American unit. The Japanese executives actually had some tension within their unit, as Kazuhiro along with some other executives were torn between the more American values and their own. the Japanese way, while some executives only believed in the Japanese values alone. A lot of the inter-unit tension was created by a lack of input from workers and a sense that they were just assets with no needed opinions. There was a lot of misconception due to Hunt's constant lying. This resulted in challenging but not completely fair management. Also, neither unit took the time to get to know the other unit. This resulted in low motivation along with a misalignment of needs and values. The Japanese expected the Americans to be motivated simply by intrinsic motivators. However, this proved not to be the case and required the 15,000 car goal to be implemented. In order to motivate employees, you must understand your employees, and the Japanese executives took no time to understand the workers. However, this is partially Stevenson's fault as he was not honest with the executives about what the workers would want or need. As for task requirements and individual skill/ability, the American workers had the skill and ability but were not motivated and also had different levels of product acceptance as they were okay with more defects, unlike the Japanese. For this reason, though, they did not exactly fit the role and requirements of the job, as the organizational culture was forced on them at first by Kazuhiro and was not right for the workers. As was seen prior when the cohesive vision was created by Kazuhiro and Stevenson, the employees were right for the role and requirements as well. The individual needs and values of the American workers were greatly different than the Japanese executives. This created great tension within the workplace and did not change until the end when the mutual desperation and time to allow their diverse differences to melt away. But at first, the personalized needs and values greatly different from the company-oriented needs and values of the Japanese executives. They were not compatible. The Americans wanted better pay, job satisfaction, job security, and work-life balance. The Japanese only cared about the betterment of the company, and everything else came second. They did not need satisfaction on the job and did not value family time. Once again, until both leaders became desperate, the changes implemented were not conducive to high productivity in this plant. In the end, the changes made were not in alignment with the goals of the two groups, the Japanese management and the American workers. The Japanese management team assumed that they could force their culture, values, and work ethic on the American workers because they were in a position of power. This created an organizational culture war of American culture versus Japanese culture. The leaders chosen to lead this plant, Kazuhiro and Stevenson, did not have a unified vision, thus there was no way to provide clear direction for the workers. Kazuhiro wanted the collectivist culture or clan culture to be enforced on the American workers. However, Stevenson never actually enforced this on the workers, but instead told them what they wanted to hear. The American workers, who were far more individualistic, fought the new culture as they did not have a leader, Stevenson, helping them adapt to this culture. Because of the ununified vision, the mission was different for each group. As the Americans wanted to save their town and go back to their old ways, while the Japanese wanted to create a highly productive plant such as would be in Japan. The lack of leadership flowed through the rest of the functions, and in the Burke-Littman model, there is a downward progression with more weight going downwards. This means that with each change at every function stemming from the ununified vision and a lack of leadership, the changes were met with reluctance by the American workers and did not provide the right results for the Japanese management. Overall, it was not until both teams, the Japanese management and the American workers, were both desperate, causing them to unify a vision and work together, that the changes made were finally in alignment.
Each of Cotter's 8 steps is seen in the movie Gung Ho. However, they're not all handled well. Cotter's 8 steps can be broken down into 3 different segments as seen here in this graph. In the next slide, we'll take a look at each section, which can be looked at as setting the stage for change, making the change happen, and then making it stick and creating more opportunity for change and growth. Each of the steps will be addressed and discussed as to how well each step was integrated. The first part of Cotter's 8 steps sets the stage for change. The first step, a sense of urgency, was created with the closure of the plant. This caused the economy of the town of Hadleyville to collapse, since just about everyone in the town worked at the plant and was reliant upon the income that was provided for all of the families in the town. The town needed the new partnership with the Japanese to work in order for the town to remain viable. The new leadership also created a sense of urgency because business as usual was not working and a drastic move was necessary to try and save the plant. By bringing in Japanese leadership, which was very successful in Japan, it would help keep the plant operating. Setting a very high goal, which seemed impossible, of 15,000 cars, created a very strong sense of urgency. The second step, of building a guiding coalition was established. In this case, it was the new leadership from Japan and Hunt Stevenson. Both parties understood the mission and were trying to work together to achieve results. However, communication issues stood in the way. The third step is creating the vision and the strategy. The vision was to keep the plant open and operational. After the plant shut down and the town's economy collapses, sending Hunt to Japan to bring their successful practices to the Hadville plant, that was the strategy that the town sought. All of the employees that were laid off when the plant closed understood this vision and the strategy that was needed to make this happen. However, they did not fully understand what the implications of that would be. They saw the Japanese as saviors of their plant, but did not fully understand what was going to be expected of them in order to achieve this goal. The next portion of Kotter's 8 steps is implementing the change effort. The fourth step is communicating effectively to achieve buy-in. Hunt did not do a good job of effectively communicating the vision to the workers. He was not honest about the number of cars that were needed to be produced in order for the plant to remain open. He went along with what the workers wanted to hear. This caused a huge gap in expectations, and he did not have everyone working towards the same goal. Communicating the vision was one of the steps that was not handled well. The workers were on board with what they felt was fair. If Hunt had been honest, he may have created more of a buy-in from everyone if they clearly understood the situation. He also did not effectively handle communication of the way the Japanese wanted to work. Hunt was trying to keep everyone happy and telling them what they wanted to hear, instead of creating clear and open lines of communication. Step 5 is empowering employees to take action. The employees in the movie were empowered to take action. They knew that they had to build the cars and were given the opportunity of being able to work the overtime that was needed to make this happen. However, the problem was that they were not willing to work in the Japanese style, which would help them to achieve this goal. The Japanese management tried to teach them and to train them. However, they were unwilling to follow these methods. They wanted to continue working in the American way, which was not going to get them to reach the goal set before them. The 6th step of creating short-term wins was not done at all. There were no opportunities to celebrate short-term wins. It was all or nothing. If they did not produce the number of cars needed to remain open, there was no win. The entire phase of Kotter's model of change was not handled well. The last section of Kotter's 8 steps is to sustain the change that was created. Initially, it did not appear that they were going to be given this chance. Once it was determined that they had reached their goal, they were given the opportunity to correct the mistakes and remain operational. This was a huge win. By management working side by side with the employees, together they were able to reach this goal. This created a newfound solidarity among everyone. They were all working together at this point. Getting the chance to keep the plant open and operational gave them a renewed sense of purpose and realization that this could work. Everyone was gung-ho at making this new venture continue. This includes keeping a unified vision among the leaders of the plant. They should bring some more Americans into the management to get a more balanced leadership vision and to show upward mobility. The new balanced management team needs to create a new blended strategy and direction that is clearly aligned with the new team effort. By both sides working together and forming a unified team, they will continue to succeed.
The situation that everyone faced was certainly a challenging one. Despite all the obstacles and failures, some things were done right. The first initial action that was done right was successfully finding investors. The auto plant workers were out of work for months, and finding investors to reopen the plant was a huge crisis for the townspeople that needed to be solved immediately. Once the Japanese investors reopened the plant, placing Stevenson in a liaison position was very wise and definitely necessary. He understood the workers, which is very important when opening up a plant in a foreign country. Management employees did not see eye to eye about how to run the plant. However, what they both desired was to keep the plant running. At the end of the movie, when Stevenson and Kazuhiro enter the plant and start building cars themselves, finally leading by example, and the rest of the workers and management team follow to help. At this point, cooperation and acceptance of the very different cultures finally occurs. Lastly, the workers were able to prove to the Japanese CEO that they had the ability to make the plant very productive without prescribing to one culture.
What was done wrong? There were quite a few things that went wrong in this story. Communication was lacking throughout the entire process. There were lies, deceit, and an attempt to get buy-in through dishonesty. Hunt thought that he would be able to create buy-in by telling people what they wanted to hear. Unfortunately, this was misaligned with the goals of the organization. Celebrating milestones along the way helps to create a sense of teamwork and that everyone is working towards the same goals, and that was not done. Management and the workers were on different paths. They were given a goal of 15,000 cars, and there were no milestones or opportunities to celebrate along the way. It was all or nothing. Management and the workers were not working in a team atmosphere. It was a very adversarial relationship. The Japanese management tried to force their style upon unwilling American workers who felt that they did not need their strict methods. They had different visions and they were not working together.
What were they actually trying to accomplish? The movie opens with a scene illustrating the failure of Japanese executives. Faced with humility and shame, Kazuhiro is in search of an opportunity to redeem himself. Hunt Stevenson presents to the Japanese a proposal to open Nissan Motors Corp in the hopes it will restore faith in the American worker and stimulate the economy. Kazuhiro accepts Hunt's proposal with the intention of proving his worth as a successful executive. While both the Americans and Japanese had their own objectives in opening Nissan Motors Corp., together they hoped their unity would prove beneficial. However, in order to succeed in this relationship, both parties had different intentions upon getting there. The Japanese intended to enforce a unified workforce driven by diligence, high performance, high quality, and efficiency. The Japanese placed an emphasis on unity, in which the workforce came together as one. They encouraged adaptability by attempting to introduce job rotation so that every worker was capable of performing every job, as opposed to the previous American methodology of allowing each employee to specialize in a specific role. While the Japanese tried to enforce their cultural values, the American workforce resisted with the persistence of maintaining a work-life balance. Overall, while it may seem that both parties entered into this agreement with individual objectives in mind, they ultimately wanted to achieve a successful and productive factory. If they were to succeed, the outcome would prove beneficial to each in different ways.
Communication is the key to successful change. It needs to be honest and open. An understanding of both sides of the change effort is critical. The workers at the plant had a somewhat arrogant attitude that their way was the best. If that was the case, the plant would still be open and the Japanese plant would be closed. If they were open to the things that the Japanese management were trying to teach them, instead of being entrenched in their old ways, which didn't work, the change effort might have been better. The Japanese were also very stubborn with their all or nothing approach. Bringing balance into the picture, realizing that having a happy personal life, allowing for some time off, and celebrating goals along the way makes for a better worker. They could also celebrate life's happy moments as well. All of these things will help them to work together as a team and not be working against each other. The key is open, honest communication and an understanding of where the other person is coming from. That concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today.